Hold on. If I'm going to be doing this, I need the proper gear. Let me just... This'll do. Alright, sit down, you monkeys. Now before we start, some ground rules. Any serious crimes mentioned in this video is not meant to be funny. But I am going to poke fun at just the general lack of education and research presented as fact, because it's just getting a bit ridiculous at this point. Not essays funny, but dumb people funny. First off, people are under the impression that I changed my mind about the Chris Stepanatos incident. But here's what I actually did. Look into the legality of what Chris's story would constitute as. Was he breaking any laws? Was I overreacting? And I found some stuff. It's stuff that's not in his favor. I'm going to be a bit of legal eagle for some of this video. Hold on. Even if there was no physical contact with your body, ejaculating on someone's belongings without consent can fall under several possible criminal categories depending on the state and circumstances. In many U.S. states, ejaculating in public or onto someone's property without consent can be prosecuted under laws about sexual acts done for sexual gratification without consent. If this was done as part of a pattern of behavior to intimidate, humiliate, or violate you, this could be the threshold of harassment charges. Some jurisdictions treat semen on someone's clothing as a form of property defacement or contamination. But KP, I hear you thinking, Chris didn't actually do this. He admitted he was lying. In legal terms, Chris admitting that he lied about the incident, regardless if you believe him or not, doesn't erase the action. The law cares about the behavior itself, not their honesty afterwards. In fact, lying can make it legally worse. It can demonstrate consciousness of guilt, which matters in legal investigations. If they lied to investigators or made false statements in writing, that could open them up to additional charges, such as obstruction or false reporting. That's legally significant. It proves he knew it was wrong, and it also suggests a pattern of concealment, which is not nothing. That can matter in civil cases, workplace reports, or credibility disputes even now. Even if it happened 10 years ago, ejaculating on clothing while consent, whether he lied about it or not, is a sexual boundary violation. Period. It's still a crime, even if Chris did lie about it. That not only exacerbates the potential charges. It's not a prank, not boys being boys, and not something you two have to just shrug off because it was decades ago. It might also come under discovery rule in civil cases. Now, why would others state this is just a joke? Well, psychologically, for a few reasons.
Number 1. Minimization as a defense mechanism. Calling it a joke is a classic way to shrink the severity of the behavior that makes people uncomfortable. It's easier on the psyche to say, it was just a prank, than to face reality that somebody crossed a sexual boundary. It reduces moral discomfort. If it's a joke, then maybe it wasn't really that bad. It lets them avoid re-evaluating their own values. Just because they admit it's serious, they might also admit someone they like or trust did something wrong. It avoids the pain of empathy, because to empathize means to acknowledge that someone was harmed. This is a form of cognitive dissonance reduction. People resolve internal conflict between, I like this person, and this person did something awful, by downgrading the awful thing into a joke. Number 2, protecting the in-group power. If someone is a part of the same social or fandom circle as Chris, calling it just a joke is also a way to protect the tribe. If it's serious, they'd have to hold someone accountable, and that threatens the group's image. If it's just a joke, they can preserve the community narrative and their own comfort. This is especially common in tight-knit online circles. People fear that acknowledging wrongdoing will hurt the fandom or give haters ammo, so they rewrite the story to feel safer. Number 3. Humor as a shield against guilt. Psychologically, humor is one of the fastest ways to neutralize guilt or shame, even when it's deeply misplaced. So by laughing at it, calling it a joke, using sarcasm, they're subconsciously saying, if I treat this as unserious, then maybe I don't have to contribute to the ugliness of it. It's a shield, not for you or the truth, but their own discomfort. Number 4. Cultural conditioning. Boys will be boys. There's also the bigger picture. For decades, society has normalized sexual misconduct when it's done by men and played for laughs. From frat movie pranks to sitcom plots, the idea that ejaculating on someone's clothes is just gross humor is baked into pop culture. That conditioning leads people to default to minimization instead of asking, wait, was this an actual violation? Number 5, strategic manipulation, the cynical one. Some people know exactly what they're doing. They call it a joke strategically because they know it undermines the seriousness of your argument. It reframes the narrative from sexual misconduct to overreaction. Shifting scrutiny away from the perpetrator and onto the person calling it out. That's not ignorance. That's calculated, and it's a classic PR tactic in crisis comms. Diminish the language so the public follows suit.
Him lying about it isn't just a side note, it shows consciousness of guilt. Now, to be clear, I should have asked Chris if I could record the confrontation with him. And in hindsight, should have had him make a brief public statement expanding the issue. I don't think someone should be defined by something they did that long ago. But that's the thing, this just extends to Chris. Since Chris admitted this to Will Ryan, his boss, at least once, we can assume, if it happened on DA Games company time, which also breaks additional laws. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits sexual harassment in the workplace. EEOC regulations define sexual harassment broadly, including non-contact sexual behavior like masturbating near someone, ejaculating on their belongings, or creating a sexually hostile environment. The OSHA, or Occupational Safety and Health Act, nerd, requires employers to provide a safe, harassment-free workplace. Even if he did it in secret, the company is legally responsible if he was acting in a work capacity. The company should have known and failed to act. They did nothing after learning about it later. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission defines sexual harassment as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of sexual nature that affects an individual's employment or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. The problem wasn't just Chris did this, it's the bigger problem that DA Games didn't take accountability for letting this incident go unchallenged within the company, on top of the continued conduct in these spaces. People seem to have assumed that because these examples are old, this stuff still isn't going on. DA Games isn't actively trying to hide this currently in the year of our Lord 2025. Did you guys watch the videos I linked? This was again exacerbated in the original email exchange I had with DA Games where, and let me remind you, it wasn't just the nature of what Chris said. It's how the company reacted, didn't explain why they didn't bring this up to my attention earlier, and refused to take accountability unless an NDA was required. Will's problematic behavior is not extended to just a few bad memes, but possessing illegal materials to minors on top of proven not subjective grooming going on in the server, including having his minor girlfriend living with him at one point. And yes, all this is illegal. Guys, Will is breaking multiple laws and endangering minors, and I guess we're just going to ignore it. I wanted a conversation about accountability, and honoring that this is happening on company time is not okay, and to prove that reform is actually happening. But then I learned that this has been a big problem in the company for a long time, and I wanted to cover that. I do feel bad that Will's behavior and approach isn't the direct result of anyone else's actions, but they are excusing them by continued association and alleged enablement.
The UK workplace law perspective. Now let's talk about how UK law views something like Chris's act. Spoiler! The joke framing holds no weight legally. Under UK law, ejaculating on someone's belongings without consent, especially in the workplace, can breach multiple serious legal standards. Number 1. The Equality Act of 2010. Sexual harassment. The Equality Act defines sexual harassment as unwanted conduct of a sexual nature which has the purpose or effect of violating someone's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. Ejaculating on someone's clothes, even without physical conduct, squarely qualifies. The intent doesn't matter. The effect on the victim does. Joking or claiming it was a prank is irrelevant under the law. Employers have a legal duty to prevent and address this behavior. Failure to act can make them vicariously liable. Number 2. Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. Employers must provide a workspace safe from risks and health. Sexual harassment, not even physical, creates a physiologically unsafe workplace. Failing to prevent or investigate it can breach this act. Number 3. Criminal Law Sexual Offense Act 2003. While prosecution would depend on circumstances, acts involving sexual activity without consent, even directed at property, can fall under sections covering indecent exposure, outraging public decency, sexual assault if contact occurred, harassment or stalking if part of a pattern. There have been UK cases where ejaculating on property or leaving bodily fluids was prosecuted as sexual misconduct or harassment. Number 4. Employment Tribunal Precedents. UK employment tribunals have repeatedly ruled that non-contact sexual acts, like exposing oneself, sending explicit materials, or masturbating near someone, constitute sexual harassment if they create a hostile environment. Doing this on company time or property dramatically increases liability.
But KP, I hear your thoughts. You lied about the statement. that part was an assumption. In my original statement about this incident, I said I've never made a video like this, which Mr. Enter a lie, even though I never had a chance to clarify, nor did he reach out to clarify. He kind of just ran with it. What I was referring to is that I had never broken a case like the DA games or the Saber allegations. The video I did covering Lily Orchard was done with statements with victims that were already publicly logged. The only new information was my own experiences. This was totally different. But the voice actor incident. No one brought up this directly in the comments, but some commented on the fact that I asked people to work on a volunteer basis. I understand that volunteering is a very personal choice for many, but something that was left out in the exchange he showed is that he offered to do this in the past. The spicy comment was just a critique on it being non-traditional to my usual content, which is why something like this posted without context or consent shouldn't have happened. This same person then complained the use of the same image in Saber's video was a violation of their consent, which I found both ironic and hypocritical. But cartoon she? Well, I first would like to thank this guy for being fair compared to the rest of you fucking Halgians, but I want to stop right in the midi loft this. Now, although you and anyone can say, this is my opinion, that argument doesn't work when you were literally one of the first sources to report on the issue before I had the chance to figure out how to respond. This isn't an opinion you're repeating into the void. This is an opinion that is actively shaping how people are responding to the story, and listening to an opinion about a video that was taken down. If you would have waited on me before posting, the main part of your video could have been the DA Games highlights, which was originally the goal. I don't know, I don't think you thought about it, but coverage like that also has consequences of harassment if not addressed carefully. That's why I took my own video down. Those factors can be drastically irresponsible if you are leading with interpretations and facts that aren't backed up. Plus, it seems like your goal was clear from the start. For example, here's a clip from the original video that Cartoon She interpreted as an ego reflection. Maybe I said that because Jon Stewart and I are also Jewish, and I relate to his representation. No matter how you characterize it, this had an influence. You are responsible for how the public reacts, just like everyone else. But what about Brony Fandon't? For those of you who don't remember, Brony Fandon't is a user who originally broke the original allegation on another YouTuber named Black Griffin. You are welcome to research that case if you are new and come up with your own conclusions. But what I didn't know at the time is that Fandon't is also someone who has a very problematic views. I don't know why you're hunting predators if you talk about Lolicon like this. Also, for the record, it was Brony Fandon't's idea to connect me to Amy with the intention of putting said testimony in the video, misunderstood me, and then proceed to throw me under the bus, even though he said he wasn't going to do that. I don't really have any comments besides I won't be engaging with him again, the creepiness I wasn't aware of, and he is or was very mentally ill, so I hope he gets the help he needs. No, asset use is a mess, and although we used assets under fair use and under transformative work properties, I admit that some things slid by near the end, and that's why I took the video down and why those mirrors are probably next. Sorry for that girl that got mad at me on Tumblr. But transformative law in the United States is especially tricky, and sites like TikTok thrive on reusable content and, because it's based in China, is able to get around said laws. Bet you didn't know that. As well, it is an industry standard for actors to sometimes not have full scripts when working. But this shouldn't be a problem anyway, since I don't plan on making any more videos like this anytime soon. This is a lie. But Saber was just trying to be responsible. I understand the sentiment, but something that is never brought up is that it is borderline illegal to make someone take a pregnancy test without their consent in the United States, which is where the incident takes place. Don't believe me? I've linked cases in the description. Forcing someone to take a pregnancy test is not being responsible. It's reproductive coercion, a violation of privacy and consent. In the US, a potential father has no legal right to compel a test or access medical records. That's the law. Wrap it before you tap it. Well, what about the voicemails? So, this is going into why, as much as there are a few people asking, I'm not going to talk to anyone about this because I've already been burned with this whole situation. Now, during the immediate aftermath of this video, I was taking interviews to both acknowledge the video was bad, but to try to direct attention back to the DA Games documentation. But people were more concerned with the other side of the story. More specifically, this guy named Beckett. Beckett was already planning on covering the video, but in honesty, I wasn't really in a position at that point to answer any questions, and I should have advocated for myself a bit better. Regardless, information was coming out, and Beckett convinced me that Emily and Brony Fandon't had manipulated, but what I didn't think about more critically at the time. Now, what was available is that Saber told him and guesses that it was Emily, but that's not enough information to say without 100% doubt, which we'll get to more in a second, but that someone is innocent or guilty. Still, Beckett convinced me that this was fact, but the thing is, it's not. Then I cried. And then I panicked. And then made a bad decision. And then it escalated, but then it was talked about. And this is why I wanted to take space from all of this. I wanted a chance to sit with everything myself without being pulled in different ways. But cope convincing people and acting that Emily's reputation and the Skype logs are finite proof is incredibly dangerous. It misleads people to what evidence actually is. It enforces myths about trauma and abuse.
Bottom line, trying to convince people that those logs aren't enough is just ethically shaky. It's actively harmful. It spreads misinformation, reinforces a dangerous myth, and manipulates people into simplistic conclusions about deeply complex events. If you want to argue context, fine. If you want to say, this raises questions, sure. But the second someone calls it a smoking gun, then we've left the realm of good faith discussions. Cut this part out, cut this part out, cut this part out. This is for the one under it. I'm guessing you want these spaced. I don't know. Days never finished. Mess has got me working.
And dude, don't tell me you're not being biased if you were literally interviewing former friends of mine about me without giving me a chance to comment on their accounts or even be aware that this is happening. What does this have to do with anything discussed in the video? Or is this just there to damn my character a bit? This is classic defensive psychology.
It's classic deflection psychology. She's lying means we don't have to wrestle with the facts. She's too immature to understand means we don't have to hear her perspective. She's doing this for attention means we don't have to question the system. It's not like they know something bad about you, it's that they need to make people believe something bad about you, or else your points still stand.
And dude, I criticized your approach and your framing, and you threw a name-calling tantrum, even in your title. Your title response screams that. And you want to be taken seriously? This looks like textbook projection, my guy. And for the record, Henry was not present for the Rachel Bloom thing, and that's not what directly happened. Henry was not there for the con he mentioned with Jen Blake. And this was something between me and her that she previously approved. If she had any issue, she could have come to talk to me. My issues with race were not frankly involving Casey. I did not just sit there and curse him out. And most importantly, whatever stories Casey was being told, she should have come to talk to me about them directly. Withholding truth because you think someone can't handle it isn't kindness at all. It's controlled disguise as concern. When you decide for someone else that they can't handle certain information, what you're really saying is, I don't trust you to make decisions about your own life. There's a big difference between saying, I'm scared this will hurt you, and saying, you're too immature to know this. The first is honest vulnerability. The second is paternalistic. If you're deciding what I can or can't handle without asking me, you're not protecting me. You're patronizing me.
Number 3. It shifts the power dynamic, and not in a healthy way. Real friendship is built on mutual trust and respect. But withholding information flips that balance. Suddenly, one person is a gatekeeper of reality, and the other is a child that can't be trusted with the truth. That power imbalance corrodes the foundation of a relationship. Because if one person's always deciding what the other can and should know, then that's not really friends anymore. It's managing them. And when people feel that, even if they don't know why, they feel betrayed later. Number 4, protecting someone from discomfort actually stunts their growth. When someone withholds something because you're not ready for it, they're often thinking in short term, I don't want to upset them now. But discomfort isn't the enemy. It's how people develop resilience, emotional intelligence, and wisdom. If you shield someone from reality, they will never get the chance to build those skills. You're not sparing them from pain, you're stunning their ability to grow. Another strong line. Choosing between silence because you think I'm too fragile isn't kindness. It's robbing me that chance to grow from the truth. Number 5, it's often about your discomfort, not theirs. This is the uncomfortable truth. Most people who say they're withholding information to protect someone are really trying to avoid their own guilt, fear, or awkwardness. They're not protecting the friend, they're protecting themselves from the fallout of honesty. And that's not worth naming, because if the motivation is selfish, even subconsciously, it stops being a moral choice and starts being a control tactic. The bottom line, withholding important truth because you think someone can't handle it isn't compassion, it's condescension. It denies them the agency, infantilizes them, and often protects you more than it protects them. True respect means trusting people with the truth and supporting them through the fallout, not deciding on their behalf when they're too weak to know it.
There was also an alleged incident that Beckett, so clear in his convictions, tried to imply Emily, via a private discussion, that her childhood trauma was not valid because she wasn't vocal about it. Like, excuse me? Are you so convinced your boy made no mistakes at all in this case that you think you have the right to dictate someone else's traumatic experiences as a child? Now, regardless of how you view Emily, this isn't okay. I think this moment, for me, highlighted the desperation here. This, to me, seemed like an unhealthy aching need to dismiss these accusations, that someone will act as an unethical authority to someone else's lived human experiences. That's not okay. No one should be questioning other people's experiences that they were not there for. Period. Like, why are you so desperate to present this story as objective fact when that's not what is happening? Trust me, bro. Look, something to keep in mind is that no one in this conversation is a cop. No one to my knowledge is a mental health expert, including me. My original point was just to consider both sides of the story. With how the perfect victim myth and trauma memory work, there's an argument to be made that this is what the inconsistencies boil down to. Hell, to give the benefit of the doubt, that might be what's happening to Saber a bit. My point is that we can never know. I was never in the room, neither were you, I assume. But when we keep these aspects in mind, there's no clear-cut answer to what situation entailed, and I should have separated myself from that whole conversation so the DA Games documentation could stand on its own. Now, the perfect victim myth is about using an accuser's reputation to dismiss the validity of their claims and to question if they are telling the truth. This is a real, psychological thing, not something I made up. Whether you believe Emily or not, no one can deny that Emily's past history is affecting how this story is being told. The perfect victim myth is the false belief that only people who act a certain way, calm, consistent, blameless, and immediately reporting abuse, are credible victims. It's used to discredit survivors whose reactions or histories don't fit that narrow, unrealistic mold, or even through trauma, often cause delayed reporting, memory gaps, continued contact with the perpetrator, or messy emotional responses. The other part is trauma memory. People have called out Emily's inconsistencies in detail, and I understand that on face value, but trauma memory theory is also something to keep in mind while consuming this information. Trauma memory refers to the way the brain encodes and recalls traumatic events differently from ordinary memories. Because trauma activates the body's survival systems, memories can become fragmented, disorganized, or incomplete. Details may shift over time, and recall might be delayed. These inconsistencies don't mean someone is lying, they're a well-documented feature of how trauma affects the brain. So, even though it's been well documented that Emily's stories are inconsistent, that alone is a harmful standard to be setting for victims in general, and the fact that those documented effects were not even mentioned, even with a keep-in-mind audience, sometimes trauma can cause memory loss issues, but I don't think this is happening here, here's why. I know I'm not one to talk, but this coverage got a lot of views, and you couldn't be bothered to ask a mental health expert or double-check this. And that brings me to the Skype logs. For those who are not following the case, Saber was able to find his Skype logs sometime after the original accusations started taking off on Twitter. They are where the baby trapping story originates. It's been interpreted as a smoking gun or proof that the contact between the two of them was consensual. But the thing is, those Skype logs, those are context, not proof. That's the exact definition of circumstantial evidence. Things that might support version of events, but can't prove what happened inside that room. The only thing that can prove that is footage from inside the hotel room, which doesn't exist. I assume. I hope. If this was a court case, the Skype logs of the evidence wouldn't come close to meeting the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, and even possibly dismissed. And the fact that they're trying to spin it as proof is disingenuous at best. Beckett wants Saber to be innocent. That bias is showing in how he interpreted my short speaking patterns, my coping mechanisms, and his general response to the first part of this video. He's not following the evidence, he's trying to force the evidence to fit a conclusion he already likes. That's not analysis. That's an agenda. There's a huge difference between, I think this points towards innocence, and this proves innocence. The former is a theory, the latter is a lie. But KP, I hear your thoughts. What about how Emily still talked to Saber before or after the allegations? This is not rare. It's actually documented as common in trauma cases. Studies on assault survivors show a significant percentage maintain some level of communication with the perpetrator afterwards. Not because they weren't harmed, but because trauma doesn't erase the social, emotional, or power dynamics at play. Examples that happen constantly: a teen still messaging the teacher who groomed them, a victim laughing politely with a coworker who assaulted them at an office party, a survivor texting an ex, "Hope you're okay," because they're scared of what will happen if they don't. For some key documentation and studies, this article examines how and why some survivors continue interacting with their assailants after an assault. It discusses dynamics like power imbalances, coercion, social pressure, emotional ties, and the survivor's safety calculus. Man, I fucking failed calculus. Although this is more about disclosure and navigating post-trauma life, it includes interview data in which survivors describe ongoing contact, sometimes forced, sometimes voluntary, with the person who harmed them, and the psychological complexity behind that. This is more of a general reference text on trauma responses. It explains how trauma can lead to survival behaviors, emotional regulation difficulties, and relationship paradoxes, such as ambivalence towards the perpetrator. While it doesn't always name continued contact, in every case, it frames how trauma affects behavior in contexts like this. At the end of the day, if your argument only works by pretending uncertainty doesn't exist, then you're not seeking truth. You're seeking comfort. But KP, I hear you thinking, why do people want this to be so cut and dry? A couple of reasons.
Number 1, emotional investment, cognitive dissonance. If Beckett admired Saber, worked with him, or built any part of his identity around believing Saber is a good guy, then hearing a credible allegation forces a psychic collision in his head. The person I respective might be harmful versus I believe good people don't do bad things. This tension is called cognitive dissonance, and the human brain hates it. Most people resolve it by not questioning their worldview, but attacking the new information. That's how you get people twisting themselves into knots to prove someone is innocent because the alternative threats their own self-image. Number 2, protecting his own ego and credibility. If Beckett publicly defended Saber early, then his own reputation is now tied to Saber's. If Saber is guilty, Beckett looks foolish, naive, or even complicit. That's a hard pill to swallow. So instead of facing that, he doubles down. This is the most common escalation pattern there is in public scandals. Defenders don't back down because they think they're right. They don't back down because they've staked their own credibility in it. Number 3, fear of what it says about the ecosystem. If Saber is guilty, then that means the ecosystem that Beckett belongs to, fandom spaces, YouTube culture, and creator communities, is capable of harboring predators. And that truth is terrifying for people who built their careers inside those worlds. So instead they cling to, he's innocent, because it allows them to believe the system is fine. It's not really about defending one man, it's defending their sense of safety and control. Number 4, control the narrative. If Beckett flames himself as a rational voice who knows what's true, he gets to control how people talk about the story. That gives him social power, and social power, especially in internet culture, is addictive. Claiming there's no smoking gun, or telling a survivor they should have spoken up, isn't just bad trauma literacy, it's attempts to reshape the story so that Beckett is the authority and you're the one who doesn't get it. Bottom line, it's not necessarily about Saber's innocence at all. It's about Beckett's comfort, Beckett's image, Beckett's worldview, and maybe even Beckett's power. That's why people twist themselves into pretzels to defend someone, because the alternative forces them to question themselves. Cognitive dissonance 101, and why it's showing up here. Cognitive dissonance is that awful itchy tension our brains feel when we're holding two conflicting beliefs at once. Example, Saber is a good person. Good people don't assault others. There are allegations Saber assaulted someone. All three can't comfortably coexist. Something has to give, and instead of changing the first belief, Saber is a good person, many people will distort or reject the third one. The allegations must be false to reduce that tension.
But this line is the kicker. Beckett makes a comment about how he never stated he wasn't going to be unbiased in his coverage.
Number 1, he wanted to win a narrative battle, not seek truth. Once someone stakes their ego or worldview on certain versions of events, Saber is innocent, Emily is lying, KP is wrong, they stop acting like a reporter and start acting like a liar. A liar's job isn't to find the truth, it's to make their side sound right. By admitting his bias, Beckett is basically saying the quiet part out loud. He didn't enter that video asking what really happened. He entered asking, how do I convince someone my version is right? Number 2, cognitive dissonance again, but turned into a self-preservation. If Beckett's internal story is Saber is innocent, and he's already publicly aligned with that, backing up now would mean admitting he might have been wrong. He might have hurt people with his coverage. His credibility may take a hint. And for a lot of people, that's unbearable. So instead, they double down even harder and build whole videos around protecting that narrative. That's not logic. That's a subconscious safe face reflex. Number 3, Bose, Clout, and audience reinforcement. Let's be blunt. Outrage videos, especially ones where someone declares themselves as the reasonable voice against the emotional mob, perform really well on YouTube. If Beckett's audience is mostly saber defenders or fandom contrarians, then there's pressure to deliver a video that confirms what they already want to believe. Bias isn't a bug in that model, it's the selling point. Number 4. Objectivity isn't the point. Delegitimizing you is. Even at an obviously biased video, you can still achieve a goal, undermining your credibility. If Beckett can convince people you are irrational, emotional, unreliable, or making it up, then they never have to deal with the actual content of your arguments. That's why people like him focus on your tone, your character, your phrasing, anything except the systemic issues you're raising. Because if the messenger is tainted, they can't be ignored. Bottom line, if someone admits their bias and still steps into a public analysis role, they're not investigating, they're campaigning. They're trying to win a story, not understand a situation. And that's why his arguments fall apart under scrutiny, because they're not built to hold truth, they're built to hold comfort.
You just admitted you were trying to pressure me based on bias and conditional evidence. Why would I have taken the call if I would have known this was your intention? Ending. I think one of the worst parts of this process is not only the fact that the kids in the DA game spaces are getting overlooked by the rest of the fallout with the video, it's just that I love doing this. I love making content. I thought I could help this community take accountability to the kids they have in their sphere. So, if you gain anything from this, please look into the documentation, because unlike the Saber and Emily situation, there is mountains of proof. Grooming has gone on in their spaces unaccounted for, and the general consensus is that Will Ryan is too conflict avoidant to take care of his community and protect these kids from people in his own community and from his lack of boundaries. This is public gaslighting. They are trying to rewrite definitions of evidence, consent, and credibility. Shift blame, distort context, not clarify the truth, but erode it until people give up trying to find it. They're doing it to convince the bystanders, the people who don't know the full story and might be swayed by repetition and certainty. So, I urge you to check out the Parlo videos I have linked in the description to get an idea of the full scope of the situation, and keep what I said last time. And the thing is, I love doing this. I love analyzing media and getting to the core of why media shapes us so much. I am turning comments off for this video because my mental health literally cannot take anymore. I am turning off comments because this conversation deserves more than knee-jerk outrage. It deserves careful thought and accountability. My goal was never to win an argument. My goal is to protect kids, demand better from creators, and remind everyone that consent, truth, and safety matter than fandom comfort. I hate you.